Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Chiller Chat. Thank you for joining us. Tonight's guest is Nate Ragon. Nate, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. The last time we were together doing this was back in 2011.
Yep.
We had set up the Latonia Theater in Oil City, and we had done this just like a talk show. We had a live audience. We had live bands in between the guests.
I forgot about the bands.
Yeah,
yep.
We had bands. Yeah, and we had that's when we had John Russo and Russ Striner and George Casano on from Night of the Living Dead, and you were on and you were showing your Scream collection, and you were talking about what you did as far as being a consultant for the Scream 4 movie. So maybe we can pick it up from where we last left off 7 years ago. But tonight you're here with us, and you're going to be talking more about what I see. You brought some of your
I brought
here.
a couple things. Do you want me to show them now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So this is a mask that was used in Scream 2. I got it from a crew member who worked on the film, and it's signed by Wes. So it has a lot of modifications done to it for the filming, but it was one of the ones that the stuntman actually wore.
Oh, okay, and that's signed by Wes Craven. Wow,
Yep.
that's really cool.
Yep.
Now you live in Clarion.
Yes.
And do a lot of people know that you had ties to the movie Scream 4 and what your ties to that movie were?
Most people do, if not just because they know me and know of me and what I'm into. But, you know, at the time that was happening, you know, obviously there was like the interview that I did with you. There was stuff online about it.
Yeah.
There was an article in the Derrick about it. So people pretty much knew because of that.
Because that's an actual prop.
Yes.
Used in the movie, signed by Wes Craven. So, and you've been collecting this stuff since the beginning of the Scream franchise, right? Or when did you jump on board with that?
It was probably around the time that the third movie was in theaters.
Okay.
Which would have been in 2000. I was in 11th grade at the time, I believe.
Okay.
I had kind of always wanted to have something that was used in the movie. Now, back then, you know, this kind of stuff is, I mean, prop collecting's kind of blown up since 2000. Back then, it wasn't really a big thing. It was actually fairly cheap and easy. I say that lightly, cheap. It was fairly cheap to acquire things like that back then, as opposed to now, where there's actually auctions all the time for stuff like that, and you know they go for astronomical amounts of money. But I was actually in school in the computer lab, and I was on eBay. This was back when eBay was not what it is today.
Yeah.
You very rarely saw anything on there that had a picture attached to it. You know, there was no PayPal. It was you write a check or you know, do a money order and send it to the person. And I was actually looking for a poster from the film, and an auction popped up for everything like costume, mask, props that were used in the third movie. I have to have this. So, you know, being 16, I didn't have a ton of money, so just begging my parents, like, please, I don't care. Christmas, birthday, for the next 10 years, I don't care. Just get me this. Yeah. So they said, okay, just bid on it, whatever. So we did it, won it, got it. You know, it was the coolest thing ever. I always had intentions to display it, but back then, it, you know, 16-year-old trying to get a mannequin and stuff again. Yeah. Early days of the internet, it was a little bit harder to find stuff like that. So, you know, I showed it to a lot of people, and you know, I admired it, but it just kind of sat in a box, to be honest, for the longest time. And it wasn't until many, many, many years later, like when Facebook came out, became kind of easier to contact people, that I was like, you know, I really don't know a ton about this aside from what it was one of the stuntmen that wore it in the movie. He was the one that I bought it from. I aside from what he told me.
This one right here, that's the one? Or
I'm talking the Scream 3 costume, the original prop that I had got. Yeah. So I didn't really know much about it aside from what he had told me. So I just started trying to find people on Facebook that had actually worked on the film. And I contacted a couple of the prop masters and just kind of said, hey, I have this costume and I was just wondering if you could tell me anything more about it. So heard back from one of them. His name's Skip Crank. It's an odd name, but that's his name. He's done a ton of movies. Like he worked on Fight Club. He does TV shows now. He's currently doing, I believe, The Affair on Showtime. Before that, he was on Ray Donovan, but he's done a ton of movies. He actually worked on all the Scream films. And he responded and told me pretty much everything I wanted or needed to know about it. And we just kind of kept communicating and eventually was presented to me like, hey, I also have all of this stuff that I kept from all 3 movies.
Yeah.
If you're interested in any of it. So I was able to acquire all that stuff. And then that was how I got the large chunk of what I owned.
Well, that was after Scream 3. Did you see the first one in the theater? Were you a fan from the beginning?
Yeah, I did see it in the theater. That would have been in '96.
Okay.
So I saw it in a theater that's not around anymore in Clarion, like the one that was in town.
Okay.
But I did see it in theaters, and I had already been a fan of like horror and slasher movies, so I just thought it was the greatest thing ever because there hadn't really been a slasher movie since the '80s.
I was going to ask you what compelled you to that one, because I know you are a huge fan of the Scream franchise, obviously.
Right.
So, and then that was part of it because it was a new slasher franchise or a new movie. I guess we didn't know at the time whether it was going to take off and have 2, 3, and 4. I guess.
Right.
But just because it was a new slasher film.
Yeah, that and it had Wes Craven attached to it.
Yeah.
So. I kind of thought, well, he did Nightmare on Elm Street and all these other Last House on the Left. So, so I was a fan from the get-go.
Well, we were talking, and you, last time I had talked to you, you had mentioned about the documentary that was coming out.
Yes.
Still Screaming. And if you ever get a chance to watch that, check it out. It's called Still Screaming. It's a documentary about the Scream movies, 1, 2, and 3. They didn't put 4 in there yet because, as I believe you said that they were in the process of making that and they couldn't talk about it.
Right. Yeah. It was kind of in, I guess you'd say, post-production. They had already shot it. It was in the middle of being like worked on and then released. So I was actually told by the producer like that was their rule. Like Harvey Weinstein. Hate to say that name, but actually Harvey said like there's one rule. You can't ask about Scream 4. You can't talk about it. So that was their rule going into doing the documentary.
Okay. Well, I was watching that the other night, and like I had told you, but I'm seeing these. I'm seeing Wes Craven. I'm seeing Henry Winkler, who was a teacher,
right,
in one of the movies, and Courtney Cox and Patrick Warburton. And Nate, I thought, wow, that's neat, like how many people could say that? And then of course in the credits at the end, I'm seeing your name with these larger than life personalities. How in the world did you even get in touch with these people, or did they get in touch with you to do the documentary?
So the documentary came about because it was around the time that Scream 4 was being made. It had just been announced, so people were talking about Scream again. People were getting excited about it again. So there was a lot of different things popping up that had to do with Scream, whereas nobody really, they still had their huge fan base, but there was no movement on a sequel for years. So nobody was really talking about it. Once Scream 4 started filming, there were some talks like on the internet that there was a company that was looking to do a documentary on the entire series, which would be Scream 1, 2, and 3, the trilogy. And it was the same production company that did like the Halloween documentary, his name was Jason, the Friday 13th documentary.
I have that one.
Yeah.
Tom Savini hosted
Yes,
that.
yep,
Yeah.
he hosted that. So they had already done that, and they kind of, okay, well, we might as well do Scream because there's another one coming out. So I just knew that it was happening, and I was like, I need to find out who's producing this. So same thing, looked them up on Facebook, messaged them, and just said, hey, you know, this is who I am, this is what I have, you know, this is what I know. If I can help in any way, that'd be awesome. And they responded immediately, and it was the producer, Anthony Massey. He owns Massey Media, is his company, and they've done a lot of these like horror series documentaries. And he pretty much responded and was like, every time we do one of these documentaries, we always wait for that email or message from that super fan that's like, hey, I can give you a lot of information on this. So they pretty much just said, anything you want to do, you know, you want to be interviewed, you want to help us do research, can you get us in contact with anybody? And they were really surprised because they were like, here's who we have so far. And I'm like, well, you got to get the guy that played Ghostface for like this scene in Scream 3. And I know him from Facebook here, contact him this way. So I hooked him up with a bunch of people and did a lot of research for them and then landed the interview for it.
And they send a crew out and film you? And, Wow.
So there's another, I'd say super fan that lives in California, which is where they're based out of. So they had also went in and filmed like his collection. They had already done that. Okay. His was more like commercial stuff, you know, like merchandise that you could get. But it's, you know, it was insane. When I saw his segment, I was like, holy crap. Like, he has like a whole room that's just nothing but, you know, stuff like that, but it's all Scream related.
Yeah. Well, we started right out the gate on Tonight Show. You showing the mask, and you were an avid collector, obviously. But for those who may not know about our other interview, I mean, you were a consultant for Scream 4. You were actually a consultant. So you're, you know, not only a fan, but were you credited in the film with
I didn't get a consultant credit on it just because it's so like something like that is so far back. You know, you have like someone who's barely getting a credit themselves that you're helping them kind of. Yeah. So, but you know, I still got to do it. So,
that's neat. Well, and you were in the documentary.
Right,
you know,
right.
You got to be in the documentary. You know, you're on there with Fonzie, for crying out loud. You know, how cool is that?
Yeah.
So no, I thought that was really neat because you know, here you are. You were talking about in the documentary. You're talking about like the costume, you know, and the snaps as opposed to the Velcro.
Yes.
You know, and like all these things that all these you know, the production crews have to think about. You know? I don't think that, you know, your average viewer has no idea what goes into a production such as that. You know? So I find it fascinating because you know, you're telling. Oh, and I remember the knife that you brought when we were talking about it before. You brought the handle that they just used a computer graphics. To
it was
do the
just
blade.
A handle.
Now
like
you hear about that in the Walking Dead all the time.
Yep,
you know,
it was just like a foam handle.
Yeah.
And they would add the blade later, but then they would also they had retractable knives on Scream 4 also. From what I was told, the issue with those sometimes is obviously there's always the risk of injury because if it doesn't retract right, you're pretty much stabbing somebody.
Well, wasn't there one incident where I don't know if it didn't retract or if the handle was one of the guys in the Ghostface costumes actually he thought he got stabbed or something because the girl
ice pick a retractable ice pick in Scream 3 it didn't retract.
She missed the pad, the little padding, you know, that he had, and he thought that he was actually in pain.
It like happened to not retract, so it's like getting hit with an ice pick.
And at that point in the movie, he had his mask off, so you can actually see his reaction. And that sincere, probably panic with it. Probably, you know, there's some pain associated with it. He's probably panicking to you know, for a second or so, thinking he gets stabbed.
And they don't really like to use the retractables with a lot of blood because it gets down inside of it. They're really hard to clean. It can cause them to like,
Oh yeah.
gunk up, and then
Yeah.
it won't retract right. So a lot of the stuff in the fourth one was just a foam handle. So they're stabbing like that with a foam handle, and then they add the blade later.
Do you happen to know if they'll be making another one? Or is that done?
To my knowledge, it's done, but I wouldn't say forever because you never know. I mean, you have like a company like Blumhouse now that seems to be resurrecting everything that everybody thought was done. They have the new Halloween coming out that's ignoring all the sequels and just a direct sequel to
With Jamie
the
Lee
first
Curtis
one.
back in
Yeah.
it, yeah.
So, there's a chance, I guess.
What do you think about that when they do that? I mean, they just totally disregard everything that's, in between.
I think something like Halloween, when you think about it, the timeline of that series is already so crazy. Like you have like the original Halloween, Halloween 2, then you have Halloween 3, which has nothing to do with any of them.
Right.
Then you have 4, 5, and 6 that kind of follow one story. Then when Halloween H2O comes out, it says, you know what, we're going to ignore 4, 5, and 6 and be a direct sequel to the second one.
It's funny because you mentioned part 6, which I happen to love that movie.
Yeah, that was actually the first one I saw in theaters.
I saw that in the theaters as well, and they build up this whole intricate storyline as to how they're actually explaining a lot of this, where Michael comes from and why he is the way he is, and this little sinister cult, who's been kind of orchestrating this, and then it's done. They go to the next movie, like you just said.
They were just like, you know what, we're done with that.
Yeah, forget it.
Yep. And now they're doing that again. Now they're like, hey, forget everything.
Yeah.
This one just takes place after the original.
Yeah. Well, maybe Ryan Johnson wrote that one. Little Last Jedi reference.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Let's just take everything that everyone's been enjoying and throw it out the window.
Yep.
But yeah, now, and that could be its own episode. I guarantee you, if we got to talking about that, I think it's. Now, didn't you? I'm thinking about something. I don't know. For some reason, did you contact Heather Donahue from Blair Witch Project? Did you have some association with her?
Yeah, I still talk to her. Yeah.
That is amazing. I'll tell you what. I'm going to tell you. In the 90s, or when did that come out? 99?
Yep.
90? Okay, 99. I remember seeing that, and maybe that's not the cool thing to say, but I'm going to tell you that scared me.
Yeah.
I got the creep factor at the 10 level with that movie.
Absolutely.
And I love that. I love that feeling of being scared or having that creepy feeling. I don't know if it was a genuine scare, but it was that wow, that creeped me out, and I hadn't seen that for so long. I remember only a couple movies, when I was little, The Exorcist, of course, the TV version, when I was a little kid.
Which is still probably equally as scary,
That creeped me out. The Exorcist creeped me out. And then I watched the Blair Witch Project. And obviously, if you're watching it more than one time, you're not going to get that. That's a one-time shot, you know? And it did the trick with me. And a lot of people say, that...
Nothing happened is what they say.
Yeah.
But I always describe that movie like it was an hour and a half long build up to a jump scare that never really happened. But that's sometimes like the scariest part of a scary movie is you're like, okay, something's gonna happen. And the tension it builds up.
Yeah.
Usually it's like a couple seconds and then you get the jump scare. This was like an hour and a half of tension building.
What's neat about that too is a lot of people didn't understand that wasn't. Everybody now does the documentary style of movies.
Right.
But back then, that was a novel idea, and it was so great. They had, that term, catching lightning in a bottle. They did it, and there have been many attempted repeats after that to make similar movies in a similar way. But they pulled it off. And there were a lot of people who did not understand that wasn't real. I mean, they went to I think it was the Cannes Festival or something. I'm trying to remember this correctly. I'm sure there will be people who will quickly correct me after this, but there was somewhere where they thought it was in poor taste to show this because they were like, wow, you're showing this footage. These people didn't come back.
Right.
You know?
Well, their early advertising for that movie was like fake missing posters of the 3 students. They plastered them all over Maryland, all over where that film festival was.
Yeah.
So people thought they were actually seeing something like that.
That's great promotion though. They really did a great job.
No, you could never do that again, like you said, because now with the internet, just type in, okay, they're not, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a one-time thing, and they did it right. So, but you say did you talk to her, or were you corresponding?
Yeah, we actually talked a lot back and forth for quite a while. I still talk to her from time. She's just not as active on social media as she used to be, but we had talked quite a bit for several years. I had actually originally contacted her to just be like, I'm a huge fan, explain all that stuff to her. At the time, she wasn't really huge on the movie. She's since come out and kind of embraced it. But
oh, really?
Yeah. At the time, she just kind of was like, was kind of, yeah, that was in the past. Like, I'm kind of done with that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
She did a great job.
Yeah, but now she was all, she was always posting about like when the newest one came out a couple years ago. Yeah. She went to see it and was excited about it. But I had originally contacted her with that stuff and kind of was like, hey, did you keep anything from the movie? Which she didn't. She did and she didn't. They actually wore those clothes for the entire time they were in the woods. So she said after it was over, they all threw them in a fire pit and burned them. And I was like, oh, are you kidding me? Oh, wow. She's like, I still have the hat though. She still has the hat. Yep, she still has the hat. So as long as I know where it's at, I feel better. Yeah. I don't necessarily have to have it. I just like to know, okay, it's somewhere safe. It's,
maybe.
It's movie history. It shouldn't be burned. If you ever feel like burning that, please.
Yeah. So you contacted her through social media?
Yes. Yep.
She responded.
That's
neat. That's really. Well, I just something during our conversation here reminded me that you had. And this was years ago. The things I remember, but I just remember you contacting her.
Yeah.
And you saying that she was a really cool person.
Yes. Yep.
And really down to earth.
Yeah. When I first contacted her, she was actually in the middle of writing her book that came out.
We actually didn't get to this last piece right here that you have. Can you mind showing us that?
Absolutely.
I just realized there's we could sit and talk about Blair Witch all night.
So this is from Scream 3.
Okay.
Now what this is Scott Foley's character, Roman Bridger, who's a director in the movie. He's directing the movie about the movie.
The parody,
3.
right.
Yeah, he's directing that. This is his prized music video award that's on his desk in the movie. And in the film, Jenny McCarthy is kind of snooping around his office when she shouldn't be, and she accidentally knocks it over and breaks the head off of it and tries to like tape it back on. So this is that one, and the prop master confirmed with me that this was the only one that was made. They didn't make like multiples of it. They just had this one. And I actually got this one in an auction, so when I showed it to him, he was like, where'd you get that?
Is that right?
He was like, oh my gosh. He's like, I never thought I'd see that again.
Wow, that's incredible.
Don't have the head, but have the rest of it.
Wow, that is neat. Well, hopefully maybe they'll come out with Scream 5 and you can start collecting again.
Yeah.
You never know.
Except now it's pretty expensive because it's kind of a popular hobby now.
Yeah. Well, now everybody can go online and you're all competing, I guess.
Right.
For the bid.
Yep.
So. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I can't really think of anything.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. We'll have to have you back on, again and again, because I love seeing this stuff. And last time you were here, you had the costume, the actual costume that was worn in the movie. So I appreciate you coming tonight. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Very
Thank
much.
you for having me.
And thank you for joining us again on Chiller Chat. And don't forget about our companion show, Chiller Night Theater. And thank you and have a good night.
How many times do I have to tell you, just because something isn't good doesn't mean it's bad?